The reason we all feel so strongly about the topic is because advertising is what we see all day long, is what our kids see, it's what our colleagues see, and the way power that women have is represented in advertising is key. Now, before we start the panel, we wanted to show you a video that shows basically videos equal more than 1,000 words and shows why this is actually key, not for ourselves, but for future generations. So we'll play a quick video.
This afternoon, we're going to draw people doing different jobs. And the first job we're going to draw is a firefighter.
Have a think in your head what a firefighter looks like.
Oh, we're doing a firefighter.
What's your firefighter called?
Mine's called Firefighter Gary. Firefighter Stan. Firefighter Simon. He's big and strong. He's got a big helmet on.
That's brilliant, isn't it?
Next, we're going to draw a surgeon.
Have you thought of a name for your surgeon?
Jim Bob.
Jim Bob.
He's a brain surgeon. I think he would wear a stethoscope. He gives you medicine. That's his ambulance.
Okay, next, we're going to draw a fighter pilot.
This is his jet plane. He rescues people. He likes to do stunts in the air and stuff.
Okay, now who would like to meet these people for real?
Yeah! They're dressed up.
My name's Tamsin and I'm a surgeon in the NHS.
My name's Lauren and I'm a pilot in the Royal Air Force.
My name's Lucy, I'm a firefighter in the London Fire Brigade.
So who wants to know how to do an operation?
Who's putting it on?
Try my stethoscope.
We put this in here. What does it look like? There you go. Now you're a proper fighter pilot.
So into your ears. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
It's really good. It's much better, yeah, it's much better than the kids one.
I think that was better than anything we could have talked about in describing the impact on future generations. And especially if you're a mother of a little girl, that really impacts you and shows the responsibility we have. However, how can we convince more companies to really care about us, collectively as companies versus as parents?
So I am all about the fact that we should create less harmful gender stereotypes for young people so that little girls can watch themselves growing up on screen and see sort of aspirational messages about what kind of people they can be. But one of the things that we know about working with our clients is that making the case to do the right thing is not enough of an argument to make your clients want to change. Like, we have to find business reasons that this is the right thing to do. We have to justify that it's going to grow their business to speak to women in a way that acknowledges their whole selves and not just these sort of stereotypes of what exists in the world. And one of the things that we've been working on a lot, and I think you see this coming up a lot in the advertising industry at the moment, is, and I think Alicia, was just talking about it, is like, there are business reasons to take women seriously. It is not just about like making little girls feel good about themselves, although we do need to do that. We need to make the case that there are significant business reasons to remove stereotypes from advertising, and that's one of the things that we've been doing.
What's your perspective?
So from the media side, many of our clients do have a concerted effort for multicultural campaigns, right? So they take a part of their budget and make sure that we're reaching various audiences that are multicultural. But I don't think that's good enough. I think it has to be looking at the entire marketing effort and media effort and making sure that we're representing all the money in all the multicultural ways that we need to. Because it's not, all right, here's our regular audience, and let's do a little bit in Hispanic websites or African American websites. But it should be that the creative as well as the media approach is inclusive across the board.
So let's assume for a moment that all companies are convinced. And let's assume that everyone working in advertising is actually 100% bought into that for a moment. How easy or how, I like to dream, just for a moment. But the other question, practical question is, how easy or how hard it is to actually get it right?
So, well, we know this because we see it on the news when people get it wrong, right? Like, you know how hard it is. There's a couple of examples that have come up recently that I think give some indications of the world that we're living in right now. The first one was the ad that Audi created for the Super Bowl. It's a beautiful message about a father saying to his daughter, who's this little race car driver, you know, he's like, am I going to tell her that she's not going to get paid as much as her brothers? Am I going to tell her that she's not worth the same amount as them? And everyone's like watching it, like, this is awesome. And it took someone on Twitter 5 minutes to go and look at the Audi corporate board on their website. There isn't a single woman on it. Like, so you're there thinking, hang on a second, do you believe this? Is the behavior of your company connected to the message that you're putting out there? And is it an authentic way to express things that you're actually delivering in your business or not? And it seems like in that instance, it wasn't. So basically, putting these messages out means living them in your business every day, which is a very hard thing for companies to do. And then the second example, I think, that everyone might have seen, did you guys see that Dove thing? Yeah, mad nods for that one. So, yeah, that really did the rounds. So the interesting thing about working in a creative agency is I can 100% see how that commercial got made. I really do. Can you put your hand up if you saw the image of the white woman, the black woman taking her shirt off and seeing the white woman? Can you put your hand up if you saw the video it came from? Okay, slightly fewer. So this was an image showing a black woman taking off her shirt and becoming a white woman in an ad for soap, which is very, very problematic for 1,000 different reasons. And the actual video that they made was a black woman taking off her shirt to become a white woman, who took off her shirt to become an Asian woman, who took off her shirt to become a Middle Eastern woman. And it was a video that Dove had created, I think, in the spirit of showing diversity, and like really wanted to show that all women, regardless of color, can use this product. And the way that it got passed around on the internet is in a single image that showed a black woman turning into a white woman with an advert for soap. So it doesn't matter what your intentions are if they're not created specifically for the understanding of how information now gets shared. If there is a frame in your advert that does something problematic, that is going to be the thing that goes round. So creatively speaking, it's very difficult to get this stuff right. But I think considering our work on a frame-by-frame basis is one way that you can go at it. And I think we're going to talk a little bit later about the way that we do it. But yeah, it can be hard.
So in that context, and by the way, I was one of those people that just saw the clip, and I had an amazing negative reaction to that ad. And then you shared with me the entire ad, and I thought that was actually a beautiful metaphor. But I didn't get to see the full ad, I just saw the little snippet. So next question is, what can we do, what should we do as media, creative advertising leaders, as everyone in the room? And Susan, let me start with you.
So I used to work at Ogilvy, and I was at Ogilvy when they created the Dove for Real Beauty, which was I think, game-changing creative in terms of how women were presented or continue to be presented in creative. Not far enough, obviously, from the video we just saw. We have a lot of work to do still. But I think that when I worked at Ogilvy, there was a much stronger linkage between the creative and the media. And since media has been pulled out of so many creative agencies, I think that we have to do a better job for our clients in making sure that we're linking what we're doing in terms of targeting with what does the creative look like. To your point, if something's cut down, does it still resonate? Is there going to be an issue? Do you have the right people on your teams to show the creative to see if there's going to be any kind of misinterpretation? But I think that it's finding a way for the creative and the media teams to work closely together to make sure that we have the best of the client's interest in making sure that they're presenting themselves as forward-thinking and as inclusive.
What about we had a really interesting conversation about reality versus metaphors just before the panel.
Yeah, so the way that RGA gets around this, and like I swear to God, like every day I go into work knowing that today could be the day that we fuck it up. So excuse my language, but like we try the hard, like we're going to talk about how we build teams to get around it, I think, but the thing that we try and do is reinforce in all of our strategy. I run the strategy team. So the job of the strategy team is to find and reinforce positive behaviors. So if you see a little girl feeling unhappy that she doesn't, have, or sort of, for example, that instance, that ad is showing negative behaviors. It's showing people that are not feeling or feeling that all of these kind of professions can only be filled by men. It is our job in advertising to go and then find the one little girl who believes she can do anything and amplify that, like reinforce the positive behaviors. We also get around it by we don't do metaphorical ads at RGA. We always try and create things that are essentially heightened demonstrations of the product in question. If you're doing a metaphor that is basically about, like that Dove ad's a metaphor, like you're not seeing them using the soap, you're just seeing them kind of like being women themselves. And because of that, people are you're expecting people to do too much work to fill in what the meaning is there about the thing that you're trying to say to them. If you just show the product working in a positive environment in a way that's genuinely interesting to people, it's very, very hard to go wrong, I think, in that instance. Having said that, there will be a moment I could be back on stage next year talking about the biggest disaster of my career, and you never know when that's going to happen. So we try around it the thing that I'm saying, I think, is we try to build on truth, and we try to tell true stories as much as humanly possible and reinforce those positive behaviors and reinforce the behaviors that we would like to see in the world. And occasionally we turn on the intersection between client behavior and client message, we turn down clients that don't have messages that we feel like we can support. That is also something you do have the right to say no to clients who are acting in ways that you do not feel are appropriate. So that is another way that we get around it. We try and work with clients whose business goals that we support as well.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you a slightly controversial, potentially controversial question, which is, how can we accelerate that? How can we accelerate this change? Just one stat that was recently published, it was a meta-study of multiple academic journals. 58% of women were more likely to be shown in the home doing household chores. 50% of men were more likely to be shown at work or at sports events. As simple as that. If we want to turn this around very fast, do you think regulation, and this is a controversial part of the question, do you think this regulation can play a role? Now, I'm European, where probably we have too many regulations, but maybe a valid question to ask here.
Sure. I think if the outcome of the regulations were that this would improve, then sure. But I think that the regulations might cause, if people know, let's say that there's a brand new government regulation that everything, every commercial, or whether it's a digital ad or a television commercial, has to have a certain representation of male-female stereotypes, then nobody will think it's real, right? Because it'll seem forced. So I think it has to come from the companies, from the true brand, to want to show various scenarios. If it kickstarts, maybe, but I'm not sure that that's going to address what's happening with creative.
Yeah, as a British person who works in America and has seen sort of both sides of that, the difference in culture, I think, is really interesting here. So in Britain, we tend to mandate a lot of things from the top down, whereas America has a sort of more of a sense that the market will sort itself out and tends to kind of leave these things unregulated, not always in the best possible way, but sometimes in the best way. So the situation that we're in right now is that if you as a brand in America are reinforcing negative stereotypes, we now have a platform in social media for everybody to call bullshit on your negative stereotypes. For everyone to be like, hey, we at Dove, we out and out reject this premise, regardless of what your intentions were. So the market is weirdly holding itself accountable. I don't know that you would need to regulate. And also the other interesting thing about harmful stereotypes. I have a lot of friends who are mothers, who are stay-at-home mothers. And I think they would say that if we said, as all the women in this room are working women, so I don't want to only see representations of stay-at-home mothers because that feels to me like I'm being put in a box. My stay-at-home mother friends are like, are you telling me that that's a stereotype to see, that I'm a stereotype to see a stay-at-home mother with their kids? So this whole idea of who decides what's a stereotype is very, very interesting. I think there are some basic things that we agree on, like some sort of crucial stereotyping around the roles of women, around the roles of people of color, around the roles of dads. Do you remember we went through that period of time where advertisers realized that dads were spending more time with their children but couldn't find a way to acknowledge it without showing the dads being just idiots? Do you know, like failing to put on nappies? Yeah, like failing to put on nappies or just being kind of, and like we're growing out of that as well. And I think the market at the moment is speaking for itself. Like people are communicating very clearly the things that they do not want to see. And like my job as head of strategy is to represent the outside world to my client. So if I can't represent that inside, then I'm not doing my job.
Okay, here's another question. There are lots of conversations about philosophical conversations about the role of advertising. Is it to just mirror society and reality, or is it to mold?
Oh, this is heady.
And by the way, we didn't prepare for this one. This is just my curveball.
This is like existential stuff. So I'm just like, why are any of us
I like
here?
to keep my panel on the toes.
No, it's good. So my view of that is that we live in a capitalist society. And in a capitalist society, the things that drive that society are very often the enormous market forces, and advertising is a representation. Advertising is the thin end of the wedge of the massive market forces that surround us every day. So to say that it has no responsibility in shaping the world that we live in, I think is insane. I think it is like an absolute representation of the world in which we live, and it has an enormous role for us to sort of create and shape that world towards a better community, towards a sort of better way of doing things. I think it is not flippant in any way, and we shouldn't dismiss it as such.
And from I think our responsibility as the money managers of, what media do we support and where does that go? I think it's an enormous responsibility for us. Digitally, money can go many, many different places, right? You think you're buying premium, but then that premium is extended offline, right? You could be buying programmatically, and you think that you're on a set of sites that's right for your clients, but you could be supporting sites that are, all kinds of, whether it's extreme, political sites or, sexually suggestive. Our responsibility is to make sure that we're putting our clients' dollars where it's legitimate, brand safe, and appropriate sites where we're not and look, we all have seen, the press bringing to light that even reputable sites, because it can go so far, whether it's user-generated content, whether it's premium publishers that distribute off-platform because they need to make their numbers and fulfill a campaign's promised impressions. But our responsibility is to make sure that, in terms of media targeting, in terms of spending the money, that it's going to places that we're responsible for as agencies and as marketers.
Can I build on that really quickly? So yeah, this is the thing that's so interesting. In advertising, I think we look at brands or like platforms like Facebook or Google or whatever these things are, and we look at them as these sort of incredible services, but we're paying for them. Like we pay to keep them online, and like the paid attention environment that we live in right now is such that if you are an advertiser that is supporting a system or supporting a point of view or content that you do not feel is representative of your brand, then you as an advertiser can vote with your dollars as well as a consumer as well. So making sure it involves ethics, like an ethical point of view at every single stage of the chain, from the people who are briefing it to the people who are making it to the people who are delivering it. And I think as an industry, implementing those ethics is an individual responsibility and a collective responsibility as well.
And we need transparency across a chain to do that.
Yeah.
It's probably a conversation for another day. So because I like to dream, let's assume that you have godlike powers and you can change one thing.
How do you know I don't?
That's a very good point. Then use your current godlike powers. But let's assume you have godlike powers. And by the way, I was about to say, let's assume you have a magic wand, and I realized I was using a stereotype. So I kind of stopped myself at the last moment. But let's assume you can change one thing overnight. What would you change in order to actually help this?
I think if I had to change one thing, and it's I travel a lot, I meet a lot of different people. You're in cars, and drivers ask about, wow, that sounds like you have that's a great career. Like, what do you suggest my child's going, whether it's, they're in high school or they're going to college, what should they do? And I say, learn coding. To me, girls, especially girls, learn the coding, because as the world is becoming more technology focused, it does tend to be very male-centric. And I would suggest anybody who has children of any age, start it now. Get them in those classes. We live in a town where the high school is always in the top 10 in the United States. There's coding classes. It's very hard to get in those coding classes. It's still 90% boys that are going for it, that are participating. I think that it has to come, and that's true, not just boys, or I should say, not just girls getting in, but everybody of any diversity. Like, if you have the knowledge of how to code, technology, what does it all mean? I truly believe that you have a leg up, and then you can help create how digital and technology is going to progress in the future.
Yeah, there's an amazing law called Conway's Law, which basically is a rule of technology design that says that the technology that you create will always reflect the sort of makeup of the team that creates it, which is, if you think about how much time we're spending on these platforms, you need women to do that. If I could change one thing in the short term, it would be that I don't have to look for female creatives and female strategists and creatives of color and strategists of color. I would be able to go into a room and land a brief in front of an extraordinarily diverse group of people and just not have to worry about representation, because the people writing those ads are the people that those ads are talking to. That's my thing. And we're making huge amounts of progress. I think even this year, we're sort of seeing those kind of stats creeping up, and everyone understanding that it is a business imperative and there is a job that we need to do. But I think if I could change one thing, it would basically to never ever have to worry that the admittedly brilliant white guys working on this ad are not going to get it right, because the people working on the ad are the people that the ad is talking to. That would be my dream. Hire more women and people of color, basically.
With that, thank you so much.